Welcome to the stream. Today we have the pleasure and the honor of interviewing Eric Metaxas, who wrote a biography of Dietrich Bonhoeffer that inspired the new powerful biopic that's opening this upcoming weekend. I think it's opening on Black Friday or maybe Thanksgiving night through Angel Studios, uh, Bonhoeffer. Eric, I just watched the film and I'll talk about my reactions to it later, but I wanted to ask you, as someone who spent years burrowing through the original documents, traveling to the sites, the places, meeting people who may have known him or his family. What was your reaction to seeing all this come to life up on the screen?
It's unbelievable. There's no way to get around it. It's astonishing to me. It's astonishing. It's wonderful. Now, to be clear, the movie is not officially based on my book. So it doesn't say based on the book by Eric Metaxas, but I know that the people who made the movie were inspired to make a movie about Bonhoeffer after they read my book. So this is like 13 years ago.
Right.
So, to know that it was in the process all this time, it becomes a little unreal. You kind of think, well, maybe someday theoretically a movie will come out, but you don't really actually expect that time ever to come. Like it's just a weird thing, waiting years. So the long and the short of it is I am absolutely thrilled. And of course, I'm thrilled because it's such a wonderful movie. Like, it's a lot of times somebody says they're going to make a movie, and you go, okay, they make a movie, and it's okay. But I, I'm thrilled that they made what I think of as a mainstream film. It's like Chariots of Fire. It's like, A Man for All Seasons. It's not a quote unquote Christian film. It's a film for everybody. And so, to me, this is going to be an introduction to millions of people on Dietrich Bonhoeffer who never heard of him or who don't know much about him. So since I consider him to be one of the great heroes of the faith, and since I wrote a book about him, I'm thrilled that the film's out. And as I say, I'm thrilled that the film is as good as it is. Like I didn't know it would be a great film, and it is a great film. So I'm yeah, thrilled.
Who is the fellow who wrote and directed it?
The screenwriter, his name's Todd Komarnicki. He wrote the screenplay for Clint Eastwood's film Sully, starring Tom Hanks, about the plane that lands on the Hudson, which is a great film. I know it won tons of awards. So he's a brilliant Hollywood screenwriter, but he also directed the film, and he was able, because of his time in Hollywood, able to pull in like one of the top editors in the business. The editor's first name is Blue. I can't remember his last name, but he's a brilliant editor, one of the top editors in the business. I guess he's Clint Eastwood's editor. One of the top cinematographers in the business, the cinematographer for the film who shot the film. He did the first Gladiator film. He's done Marvel. I mean, he's at the top of his game, and that's why it looks great. That's why it doesn't look like a TV movie. A lot of times, you see films with a Christian theme, and they kind of look like a TV movie, but not like a
Yeah.
movie. This looks like a movie because it was made by people who make movies. So
Right. Like, I'm always a little excited slash alarmed when I see that the screenwriter is also the director. John Patrick Shanley did that with Joe versus the Volcano. And again, that had a very different tone from Bonhoeffer. I think you'll agree.
that's the understatement of the century. Yeah. If Joe versus Volcano, which you made me see, or it's because of your recommendation I saw that. Um,
One of Abe Vigoda's late acting triumphs. And I
yeah,
don't know, I wouldn't put these two in a double feature. Although
no.
it would lighten seeing Joe versus the volcano, seeing Tom Hanks climb a volcano and offer to jump in order to satisfy the natives of Waponi would be a little bit of a psychological rest after this very intense and powerful movie. I have to say, watching this movie, one of my reactions was, I don't know if I could stand watching this if the election had gone differently. You, in your build up, before the film came out, you brought out Letter to the American Church, and then a book explicitly about a letter to the American Church. You tried to say what Bonhoeffer you think would say to the American Church on the eve of the 2024 election and in the wake of the 2020 COVID panic. And then in Religionless Christianity, you tried to distill what you thought Bonhoeffer's essential understanding of Christianity really was and how we live it today in our very eerily parallel circumstances. I have to say, watching this film, I thought liberals will love this film insofar as they fail to understand it. Liberals who see this film will react to it the way they did to your book. They will say, well, I'm against fascism. I'm against racism. I'm against the church cozying up to a fascist state. I'm just like Bonhoeffer. And then the sound of them patting themselves on the back would drown out the rest of the conversation. But when I watched this film, I tried to look beyond the surface because there's when Jesus rebuked the Pharisees and the Sadducees, he wasn't saying for the ages, do not collaborate with the Roman Empire. Do not fixate on the details of Jewish ritual law. And that's it. That was not the extent of Jesus's message. He was saying to religious authorities, don't sell out your conscience in order to get along in society. Don't cozy up to the state when it's persecuting the innocent. Don't trim and snip your morals to match those of Caesar. When you step back and try to imagine that Jesus's message has some application beyond the very specific details of his day, what is the universal message when Jesus rebukes hypocrites and Pharisees and Sadducees? Then the movie seems very different. Then when you see the Reichsbishop giving the Nazi salute in church, when you see the church rewriting the Bible to match the current mores of the existing regime, suddenly you start seeing David French and Russell Moore and Francis Collins. When you don't think this is just a movie about Nazi Germany, and the only evil in the history of the world is the Nazis, and the only form of racism that's bad is white racism. When you think, oh, maybe totalitarianism is bad in general, maybe racism is bad in general, maybe collaborating with a totalitarian state on behalf of the church is a bad thing, whatever slogans the totalitarian government is using. Then suddenly, as you watch the film and you watch them rounding up Jews and putting on Jewish stars and burning synagogues, and the church sort of looking on passively with Dietrich Bonhoeffer yelling and no one listening to him. If you think back to 2020, when they were closing churches but keeping abortion clinics and casinos open, when they were keeping children home from school, and blue state governors were dumping COVID patients into nursing homes, murdering tens of thousands of American veterans, retirees, grandmas being murdered. COVID patients dumped in nursing homes, that was murder. When you think about how the media is being censored, I mean, right now they're about to pass a savage censorship law in Australia, a hate crimes bill in Ireland that will ban discussion of Christian sexual morality. You can go to prison. When you see the citizens in Great Britain, journalists are being arrested for the things they say about immigration policy, you realize this movie is current events. It's too scary for people to realize it. Would you agree?
There's no doubt that when you see the film, you will think about what is happening today. There's no doubt about it. What's funny to me is that there are people who only think, oh, Trump is Hitler. Oh, there's a nationalistic, Christian nationalist church made up of people like Eric Metaxas and John Zmirak, and they're the Nazis. So it's kind of funny. I mean, I guess that's what makes it such a good film to me, is that you can see whatever you want in it. It's just a great piece of art. But
Right.
there's no doubt that anybody like you or me, we will see what is actually happening in the world today, and that what we seem by the grace of God to have averted with the election of Donald Trump. But there is no doubt that that totalitarian instinct which we've seen on the rise in the Biden administration, the COVID lockdowns, the way J6 prisoners were treated, the way people were treated who were at the Capitol on J6. You see all this stuff happening, in the last few years. And to me, when I see the Bonhoeffer film, that's what I see happening. It's why I wrote my book, Letter to the American Church. But to get back to the film, what thrills me about it is it's not heavy-handed, it's not propagandistic. It is a great film. And I want to say out of the gate, this to me is, to use the evangelical cliche, it's an evangelistic opportunity. This is a film you can bring anyone to. This is not a film that's going to make your neighbors uncomfortable. Anybody who likes decent film will like this film. It's a film you can bring your kids to. I mean, not little kids, but I'm saying, your teenagers or your 12-year-old. That's what thrills me, is that they made a film that it's a real film. It's a great film. And so I hope people will. I should say this too, John, that I say this about a lot of films, but this one in particular, the opening weekend has to be successful, has to be very successful. So if people are thinking of seeing the film, don't wait. See it on the opening weekend. The opening weekend is November, coming a few days from now, November 22nd, 23rd. Please see it then. Please, folks, see it then. And I promise you, it's the kind of film that you will see it anyway, because word of mouth is going to get out how good it is, and you're going to be, oh, I guess I got to see it. Take it from us and see it, or take it from me and see it opening weekend. Bring people. Let it be a big weekend.
We're going on Black Friday, so to avoid the hordes at various stores and the crazy shoppers. What a perfect night. The theaters will probably be largely empty, except maybe for people going out to support this film. And I would agree, this is a film you can bring your woke sister to see, and she will leave feeling good, thinking, yeah, I would have been like Bonhoeffer. Later on, have the really obnoxious discussion where you explain to her that she's actually like the Reichschurch. But first, take her to see the movie, let her appreciate its artistic power. The power of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, again and again, having the opportunity to go into exile and issue thundering statements from Great Britain or from the United States, as so many people in Germany did, and a lot of people fled occupied France, and were very eloquent from a distance. But to go back to the vast concentration camp that his country was becoming, and to stay there and face down the evil, and even get his hands dirty by getting involved in a plot to assassinate Hitler, to cut off the head of the snake. This from someone who had been an avowed pacifist. At one point, someone says, well, you're going to get your hands dirty. And he said, dirty hands are all we have now. I thought that was extremely powerful. And when I saw the political prisoners in the camps, I couldn't help thinking of the January 6th defendants who were politically persecuted. When I saw them twisting the law to persecute their political opponents, I could not help but think of the lawfare that was waged against Donald Trump, Sidney Powell, John Eastman, Rudolph Giuliani, and yourself. You don't whine about it as much as I think you should. I think you should whine about it in a high keening kind of voice. Look what they're doing to me! Like the grumpy old man on Saturday Night Live. I hate it when Dominion sues me for $100 million. Don't you hate when that happens? But you don't do that, to your credit, because you're a class act. I would be squealing like a stuck pig because I'm not a class act. But I saw the contemporary resonances, and I think they are an evangelistic tool to help people wake up to the coordinated.
So you saw what?
I saw the parallels between the persecutions in Nazi Germany and the persecutions in the West today, including America.
And John, obviously, I hope this movie will get people to read my book, because I recently
Which book?
My Bonhoeffer book.
Okay.
Aha. No, my Bonhoeffer book, because I recently read my own book, 600-page Bonhoeffer book in preparation for the Jordan Peterson course that I just taped in Miami, an 8-hour course on Bonhoeffer, right? And rereading my book was a strange experience because I found a lot of things that I had forgotten. And I thought it's even more true than I remembered. In other words, the parallels of the Bonhoeffer story, trying to wake up the church, to today are even more dramatic than I remembered. Even when I wrote Letter to the American Church, I missed some stuff, and I was just amazed to see those parallels. So people who see the film, yeah, there's no way you're not going to think about today.
Who are
There's just no way.
who are the some of the Christian pastors who, from 2020 on, did what Bonhoeffer would do? I'm thinking of people like Sean Foyt.
They're all my friends at this point. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
name some, but let's call some of them out. They deserve to be
Well,
recognized.
the main ones, the bravest ones are my friend Rob McCoy in Thousand Oaks, California, Mike McClure in the San Francisco area, amazing San Jose, Mike McClure, went through hell. Che An in California, Pasadena, Jack Hibbs in Chino Hills, California, Gary Hamrick in Virginia. Those are just a few. There are many others.
These are people who wouldn't shut down during COVID and
They
wouldn't go
wouldn't shut
along with
down.
the
They were
abortion-based.
brave.
They
They
wouldn't
were
go along with
bold.
the abortion-based vaccine that Francis Collins was bribing evangelical pastors to promote from the pulpit.
Oh yeah. No, it's really amazing how some, and listen, there's a continuum. I mean, some pastors were incredibly brave, others were brave but not as brave. And then there are others that were, they were trying to figure it out, and eventually they figured it out. And there were some that really failed, who I think eventually figured out, well, I think I messed that up. And then there are, of course, plenty who failed and doubled down on the failing, and they still, don't agree. So
You hear
it's
people like that today, like Mike Pence saying, "Oh, we should not confirm RFK Jr. as HHS secretary. He's pro-abortion." Mike Pence, who was behind Francis Collins, harvesting aborted babies and making mouse fetus sandwiches using brain cells from aborted babies, freshly aborted at the University of Pittsburgh, to make bizarre chimeras of fetal tissue and mouse tissue in the name of COVID research. You didn't hear Mike Pence condemning Francis Collins for that, but he's condemning RFK because RFK wants to expose what was behind the whole COVID panic and the whole public health dictatorship that was imposed on the American people.
I think that's the horror of the Bonhoeffer story. Is, you see, there's one friend of Bonhoeffer's, like he was a friend. I think when Bonhoeffer when Bonhoeffer argued his doctoral dissertation, so very early on, age 21, this guy, I think it's Helmut Rossler, I think is the name. You have to look in my Bonhoeffer book, but they're friends. Years later, Bonhoeffer is, at war with the German Nazified Reichskirche. He's at war with the Nazified German church, and finds one of these friends siding with Hitler and the Nazified church against him. And that's the horror, is that a lot of people, that they start out right, but then they drift and they're on the wrong side. So that's, I think, what makes the story so interesting. And you'll see, I don't want to spoil the movie for people, but there are people across the spectrum in it. I'm just curious, since I know you saw the movie today, what stuck out? Because I've seen it now 4 times, and I know it too well.
Well, the part that was really interesting and kind of unusual to me was the large role that the Black church in Harlem and jazz played in Bonhoeffer's discovery of a kind of Christian essentialism,
Yep.
of getting away from religion of externals, from worshiping the building and the structure and the vestments and the prestige and the social respectability. It was with the people who were most discriminated against, and we see some ugly scenes of white racism in the movie. It was
Yeah.
with the marginalized church that was barely tolerated, that existed on the margins of society. It was there that Bonhoeffer found real faith, just the way Jesus found his disciples in the marginalized, the tax collectors and the prostitutes, not in the people in the fancy vestments, in the nice buildings who were friendly with Caesar. So that
Well, and
struck me.
that's and of course that's true. I mean, Bonhoeffer came to New York. We just did we're probably going to create a little mini documentary, but we just did a Bonhoeffer tour of New York with some special donors. They came to New York, and I gave a tour of the sites where Bonhoeffer was, and he was here. Just so people understand, he was here twice. He was here in the summer. He was here from 1930 to 31 for 9 months when he was just 24 and turned 25. He studied at Union Theological Seminary, although that was kind of slumming for him. But while he was here, the biggest effect that being in New York had, being in America had, was visiting the Black church, Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. It affected him, and you referenced it, but it affected him very dramatically because he had never seen anything like it. He had never seen full-blown Christian worship with people being emotional and really into it. He'd never seen that. He thought and he could tell it wasn't a show. That's what I find interesting is, you can tell it's just a show. You could tell when it's the real thing. These people
It's interesting.
really,
He was rediscovering Pietism, which had been a very powerful movement in Germany in the past. There had been that kind of emotional worship in
well,
German churches in previous centuries, but it was largely gone in Germany by the 30s.
except I wouldn't call it pietism only because well, there are different strains of pietism. There are, there are strains of pietism where it's kind of like the Mennonite or the Amish, where they say, well, we don't do politics, we just do our own thing. We're pietistic. The thing that was powerful, and you had a lot of that in Germany, where they said, well, we don't get involved in fighting Hitler, we just want to do church. The Black church in Harlem, he saw them really worshiping God. He saw them obviously knowing God personally, taking all of that very, very seriously, not just going through the motions, but then he also saw them connecting it to social issues, to politics. If injustice was done, if somebody was lynched in the South, they would put up a big flag. Yesterday, a man was lynched. So he saw Christian faith as it ought to be in every sphere, very serious, but leaking out into how they live their lives 7 days a week. So that's what really excited him. He thought, we need this in Germany. We need the real church of Jesus in Germany. What we have is a lot of religion. And so he goes back and he sees suddenly that the way the Jews are starting to be treated reminds him of what he saw in America. And he saw horrible Jim Crow. I mean, he went to the South. He was in Washington, D.C. He went into a restaurant with a Black friend and they were refused service. He saw all this stuff and he thought, wow, this is terrible. And then he goes to Germany and he sees it happening.
There's a great line in the
Dude.
movie. It's 1931, and he sees this horrible Jim Crow stuff, and someone says, "Well, we have." I think he says, "Well, we have nothing like this in Germany," and someone says, "Oh, really? Go back there and take a look."
Well, guess what? They probably, the filmmakers may have gotten that from my book because in my book, I quote a lot of my book is comprised of letters that he wrote, to family, to friends, whatever. So it's this real personal side of Bonhoeffer. And in one of those letters, he's talking to his brother, Carl Friedrich. Carl Friedrich was this brilliant physicist who worked with Einstein and Max Planck. And they're talking about the race issue in America, how horrifying it is. And in one of the letters, they say something like, thank goodness we have nothing like this in Germany. Now, that is in 1931 or so. And it's before they really saw what happened, what was on the verge of happening, because the Nazis were already rising in power in 1931, but they hadn't been able to actively persecute the
But
Jews.
it was easy to dismiss the wilder things that the Nazis said as rhetorical excesses. Of course, they're banging on the table. They just want to attract attention. Just as it was easy here in America to ignore what the transgender lobby was promoting, to ignore the attacks on parental rights. We see parallel types of evil attacking different marginalized groups, the handicapped. I mean, 60,000 people have been euthanized in Canada. Basically, they're pressured into accepting euthanasia to save the socialized medicine system in Canada. These things are happening in the West. The Nazi spirit is alive in the West again. And I always encourage people who are pointing to the totalitarianism we see rising in different corners, censorship, medical fascism, attack on parental rights, anarcho-tyranny, the selective law enforcement, where January 6 protesters go to prison for 2 years, Antifa rioters get settlements from the police. Anarcho-tyranny was the Nazi technique for taking power, where the state allows one group to use violence and doesn't punish it, and then punishes the other people for defending themselves. That's what's in our Department of Justice right now. That's why people are screaming and yelling at the notion of Matt Gaetz coming in and cleaning things up, or Tulsi Gabbard coming in, the Defense Intelligence Agency. The victims are suddenly being given the opportunity to expose those who've been perverting the law in order to silence their political opposition. And I always encourage Christians, don't compare what's happening now to communism, because most people aren't really aware of the evils of communism. And also, I think the totalitarians now are more following the Nazi playbook than the communist playbook. They're taking over institutions, they're co-opting the churches, they're using censorship allegedly in the name of public health. Remember, the Nazis used public health rhetoric. They claimed that their opponents were contagions, threats to public health. So the Nazi parallels are really powerful. And I think this film is extremely good entertainment, and it's good historical education. It can also be a tool for awakening people to real dangers right before our eyes here today.
And I should say this. It is rare that a film comes out that's not just a great film, but that it actually provokes you to think. That to me is why I hope people will take their neighbors and their friends and their, you said, you could take your woke sister. You could take anybody. It's just a film. It's just a film. But it's not just entertainment. It actually gets you to think about bigger issues. And a lot of people, I hope, will see it who don't know the story of Bonhoeffer, who don't know that this happened in Germany, who don't know how virulently anti-Christian the Nazis were. And in the film, the film kind of conflates time periods. I mean, it shows some stuff happening in churches, which, didn't really happen until the war. But the point is, the Nazi plan, and I document this in my book, was absolutely to gut the German church. They would have done it sooner, but they didn't have the power. And so they had to accrue power, and they wanted to accrue power. I mean, their plan, of course, was not to wake up the sleeping people, just to say, no, you keep sleeping. We'll just get a little more power and a little more power while you're sleeping. Don't pay any attention. We'll just.
So one church after another would start to display the Nazi flag, the way one church after another now displays the rainbow flag. Each one an equal repudiation of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's about it. And again, it's very easy for us to look at them and say, how could they hang out, swastikas? Don't they understand what that means? And the simple answer is, of course they didn't. Of course they didn't, any more than all the well-meaning people putting up rainbow flags have any sense of what that means. They have no idea. They think it just means, oh, I'm a good German. The German economy is coming back. Isn't that great? We'll put up the Nazi flag. They didn't think of the death camp.
A lot of Christians were tricked into supporting the Nazis as a means of fighting communism. Just as today, people get hooked into the rainbow cult in the name of anti-racism. They think they're fighting Nazism. So in the past, people put up Nazi flags to claim they were fighting communism. Now they put up rainbow flags and they think they're fighting fascism. What's ironic is When you're compromising the gospel, it's always, you always tell yourself that you're fighting some greater evil, that you're doing it for the sake of the common good. But in fact, when you're betraying core elements of the Christian faith, you're never doing what God wants.
Well, again, I think I just want to say how happy I am that the movie is out. I hope, I really hope people will see it opening weekend. Please, folks, please. You'll see when you see it, you're going to be like, oh wow, this is a great film. And I think people are always kind of like, wait, they're hanging back. Don't wait on this one because it's great. It's going to be in, I think, close to 2,000 theaters. So like
Wow.
anywhere you are, it's going to be there, and people should be getting like get the word out in your churches, on your social media, to get the word out, because films like this don't come around. This is not, it's not incendiary. I mean, Letter to the American Church, when that documentary was made, that's not the kind of a film that you're going to bring people to who don't agree with you in terms of the faith or politics. This is a film you can bring anybody to. And obviously it's coming out Thanksgiving, so families get together. It's something that you can do, you can, wherever you are politically or in terms of faith or whatever, everybody can see this film. It's not a pro-Trump film. It's not an anti-Trump film. It's
No.
just a great film.
It's beautifully acted, beautifully filmed, and sobering with a really timeless Christian message. Where at one point Bonhoeffer says, all Jesus said to Peter was, "Come follow, come follow." And then towards the end, he realizes all the way to the cross. You have to sometimes go all the way to the cross. Maybe you won't be crucified. Maybe you'll stand at the foot of the cross like Mary and John. But you have to be standing in solidarity with the people who are being targeted by the enemies of God. So if that's pro-lifers who've been imprisoned for praying outside clinics, if that's PTA moms who've been investigated by the FBI, if that's political people who did use their political free speech who are being censored or canceled or prosecuted, though that's, you have to sniff out the brimstone and you have to go stand against it. That's what Bonhoeffer did in his day, and I think that's what a lot of those courageous pastors did in our day.
And one thing we haven't mentioned, it took 12 years for them to make the film. And they would always say, well, it's in God's timing. It's God's timing. And I, of course, agree with that, but at the same time, I'm just naturally impatient. And I thought, now I want it to come out now. I want it to come out now. The fact that it came out a year after October 7th, after Hamas viciously murdered 1,200 Jews and incited Jew hatred across the world in the last year, it could not be a better time for this film.
Yeah.
So if you only want to go to the film to show your support for Israel and the Jews, we need that right now. People need to show their support, and they're not going to be a lot of, pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas people at this film. In fact,
Queers for Palestine is not buying up theaters.
there was a Angel Studios who are distributing the film. They put out an ad on, I think it was on X. I didn't see it on Instagram, but it was free tickets to any anti-Semite. If you're an anti-Semite, you can come to the film for free. It was very funny because it said the film can help educate you about anti-Semitism.
How do you prove your credentials?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That's what's so funny. It's like, who would say like, I'm an anti-Semite, I'll take a free ticket. Yeah, they were obviously being sarcastic, but
you cheap money grubbing anti-Semites want free tickets.
yeah. No, it's a big film. It was filmed, half of it was filmed in Ireland, and half of it was filmed in Belgium. And it's interesting that all of the scenes in New York with the New York blacks in the jazz clubs and in the church, those are all Belgian Congolese actors.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? I thought you'd appreciate that. Isn't that cool? Because it's in Belgium. So it's really, really cool. And I have to say the scene in I saw an early version of this and I saw clips and stuff. And I thought the scene in the New York Jazz Club, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's you don't see that coming in a film about the Nazis or whatever. It was just that's one of my favorite scenes in the film. And obviously, all of the stuff, the love that Bonhoeffer has for his older brother who's killed in the war. The film opens with the death of his brother. Um, it's just it's very powerful. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of different pieces to it. And again, I don't want to give too much of it away. But I don't know how well the film will do. It should do very well because it is, again, it's a rare, great big film. It's a big film. It's like, $29 million budget. This is not some little film. It's a big film. It's a big film. And the actors are all German actors. They're famous in Germany, so they're not going to be famous to Americans. But when the film comes out in Germany in the spring, it's going to be a very big deal because the actors in it are very well known in Germany.
Well, they deserve to be
So,
well known here.
so they are authentic German accents. They're all speaking English, of course, but they're authentic German accents. Just want to be clear about that.
It's a very authentic film, and authentic Christianity is what it's about. And authentic Christianity is hard and is challenging. And there are hard, challenging questions that the film forces you to face. And I hope everybody brings, especially their high school and college age kids, because those kids are right now on the front line of indoctrination, of being co-opted, being offered 30 pieces of silver to turn
Yeah.
in their savior. And I think this is the kind of film that can plant a seed that grows into virtue in a young, impressionable person.
Well, I hope, I'm not saying it just because I wrote my book, but I hope people will buy my book and give it out as Christmas presents or whatever, because there's nothing like this. I mean, you see a film like this and it kind of whets your appetite. Like, I want more, I want more. And so obviously I did this Jordan Peterson course that won't be out for some time, but the book, it tells the rest of the story. And I should say to people, they can get autographed copies at ericmetaxas.com. But this is a story for our time. I mean, I should have said that 20 minutes ago. It's a story for our time. We're living through something similar like this. You obviously have been saying that, but I really didn't say that. It really is a story for now. And I think people will pick that up. You don't have to tell them. Just see it and see their reactions. I know we've only got 60 seconds left, John. Is there any final thoughts or questions?
Why the musical numbers with Nathan Lane? I just thought that was out of tone.
It's funny you say that, but the goose stepping scene with Nathan Lane in a dirndl, I got to be honest with you, I thought that was going to work, and I'm not going to lie to you, it does not work. It's in fact, it was cut from the film, so you must have gotten a weird.
I got the bootleg. I got the bootleg copy that sort of has scenes from the producers in it.
I it's well, look, I'm glad you saw the film, and I'm going to see it with my mom, who lived through this period. She's 90 years old now. I'm going to see it with her in Danbury. The day it comes out, November 22nd, so in a few days. I will do that with my mom, and I hope, I know we're out of time here, but I want to say I hope that people will see this opening weekend. It's really important. I can't stress it enough. It's really important. So anyway, John, thanks for.
I'm thankful a film like this has come out, and what better way to give thanks than to go see it Thanksgiving weekend. God bless, Eric. Thank you so much, everyone at the stream, everyone on the Eric Metaxas show. Go see Bonhoeffer. It doesn't have Nathan Lane.